All right, y'all, so before we get this video going, I actually wanted to give 3 shout outs first in regards to people that I followed and the directions I followed in regards to this swap. So I give credit where credit's due. I didn't invent this swap at all. I just followed directions and the leads of others, and I kind of compiled them all and put it all together into my particular swap. But let me go ahead and flip this camera around so I can show you guys where I got my information. So I won't take long, but I wanted to give 3 shout outs to these particular people. Shout out to Michael Akey. Thank you very much. I will post all of these links also in the description below. But Michael Akey, thank you very much for your help. This is a detailed description of if you're doing a digital dash swap inside of an S10 or S10 Blazer, if you're taking it from analog to digital dash. This is the directions and the pinouts of both analog and digital and how to make this swap for you as easy as possible. Pictures, directions, everything. So I was able to reference the pinouts a lot, and this is what actually helped me out a lot is the pinouts. So thank you for that, Michael Akey. Well, up next, Buick Mike. I actually just met this guy on Facebook recently, actually just a few minutes ago. So he did a write-up on turbobuick.com. It's a forum that I'm on, and this thread is actually from 2017. He posted a short video on YouTube, and it's only like 2 minutes. It basically just goes over the functionality of his dash and shows you that everything works. However, he did a super detailed description on how to swap this thing into a Grand National or Turbo Buick. I mean, it is detailed to the T. Now, this is what I mostly follow because his car is just basically like my car. Subtle differences as far as how I wired my stuff in versus what he did. But this helped me out a ton. So thank you, Mike, for doing this, and great to meet you if you ever see this video. This helped me out a lot. So again, I'll put this link in the description. Lastly, on YouTube, Saab Kyle 04. Now, he did a swap in his S10 Blazer, but his S10 Blazer was analog dash, but he wanted it to the digital dash. So what he did is followed Michael Akey's directions. The reason why I'm shouting his page out is because I actually was able to get some information from his YouTube channel in regards to a couple different things like the dimming light and a few other things. And I was actually able to see a visual of the install and the wiring and all that. So that's what really helped me out. So Saab Kyle 04, I appreciate it, brother. Thank you very much. So I'm in the car now, and I'm about to start attacking the disassembly of this thing. So I know you gotta take off the bezel here. You gotta take out the stereo. You gotta take out the climate control, I think. Eventually taking out the cluster. I think you gotta take out the headlights because you gotta wire into the headlights as well. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and tack it. I might even time lapse this for you guys, so that way you can still kind of see me working. Almost got it out, y'all. Right now, we should get it out. Whew, that was a bit of a challenge. So what I'll probably do now is kind of mock up what it would look like in there. And this is the digital dash itself from the S10 Blazer. I probably will end up taking this off because I don't know if it'll fit, but this is kind of what it would look like in there. And as you can see, it kind of almost fits. The width is actually really good, so that shouldn't be a problem. Definitely gonna have to cut these tabs off and then figure out a way to bolt that in there. I have no pictures to go off of or anything, so this is just gonna be trial and error. If you guys can see right here, this is the S10 dash. This is the Turbo Buick dash, and it's far bigger for sure. So I think it'll look really cool in there. It'll eliminate all these idiot lights and make the dash itself, the instrument cluster, a lot bigger, and it'll isolate the idiot lights over here. All right, y'all, so I'm actually just trimming this tab off. I think this is the tab that they were talking about that was actually blocking everything, and I'm just using my little cutoff wheel, cut it pretty fast. So now I'm gonna see how flush and flat it'll actually sit in there. See how good this sits in here. All right, so it's a little better. I'm trying not to cut too much off. All right, y'all, test fit after test fit after test fit, and I almost got it. My thought was to keep this here, that way I have something to bolt into as far as the dash goes, so we'll see. But the cool thing is I still have the cushion that goes around here, and this bezel sits really tight in there, so it's not gonna move. So I think I'd be okay. It's actually lined up pretty good. I thought it was gonna be a little bit more of a challenge. There, make sure you get it centered, and you want it low enough where I think this part sits about a 1/4 inch or so below. So I'm just kind of just messing with it right now, and see, I might have to lower it down just a little bit. Also this part here that's inside the bezel, I'm gonna have to trim. I think I have to trim it from here over, so this whole center section will be out. I have to get this side to push back a little bit more so it'll sit a little bit more flush, which means I have to trim the inside part of the, I don't even know what that's called, the inside part of the dash there. I have to trim a little bit down back behind there, so the bottom part right here will sit a little bit further back. So but I'm almost there, y'all, almost there. Just I'm taking my time, taking baby steps with the cut, and just cut a little bit at a time just to make sure I don't cut too much. So man, I'm loving this thing, man. I think it's a real good look in here, y'all. So I just have it powered by my little battery for my drill, and nothing's wired in yet, nothing like that. I just have it just set in there kind of temporarily with some screws till I kind of figure out what I'm gonna do, but it is all set in there. It is where it should be. It is level, as good as I can get it, at least in the center. But man, I'm loving it, man. Loving it. Let me know what you guys think, yeah. Get in the comment section right now, and let me know what you think, man. Ooh wee, man, I'm loving this thing. I am loving it. All right, y'all, so just to go over kind of what I did here. Basically what I did is I cut this tab down on the left side of the digital dash, and I left this one here, and all I did was cut this down so it won't hit that cushion that goes around here. And I also had to cut the bottom ones off, so there was one here and one on that side as well. Again, these are just kind of rough cuts right now. I'm gonna have to trim those down and make those nice and neat, and then set it in and out a few times with the dash, with the bezel on right here, this bezel. I put that on and off and on and off and on and off, and just to make sure that it was centered and it was where it should be, because what I didn't want to run into was like this being too low, and then like this sitting low, and then this getting cut off by the bezel. And so I just kind of just ran, you know, just made sure I was level, and I made sure that it was the back of this was touching the same level, and everything was, all that back there was good. So it's hitting right here and then hitting right here. This part here might be a little bit further back, but I don't know, I'll kind of attack that. What I'll probably end up doing is using some spacers in between, but you know, we'll see. And as far as additional trimming, you will have to trim here and down here. So along this edge here, and then down here as well. So originally this came down at an angle. So instead of being flat like this, how it is now, it came down at an angle, kind of like this. If you guys can kind of see that from the side, see how it's angled from the side, that piece right there. Same thing here, and that's where the original dash speedometer cluster unit sat in there. It sat flush to that, but being that I couldn't get that bottom part of the digital dash to sit back further the way I wanted to, I had to flatten this out. So hopefully I have enough room. If not, I can always trim more down. So that's why I just kind of trimmed just a little bit at a time, so that way I can always be able to trim more and not trim too much at the beginning. What's going on, y'all? It is day 2 and working on the wiring today. So I'm making sure, double and triple checking all my wires and making sure they go to the right locations, because some of these wires, like idiot lights and indicators, like the brake light, the service engine soon light, like those type of lights, some of them they power on by a negative feed. So not, you would think normally it'd be like a positive feed, but they basically turn on from when they get a negative signal, a ground signal. So I have to be careful, because some of the wires on this car actually are from a positive feed. So once it gets that hot feed, then the light comes on. So that's pretty much what I've been doing. Just really taking my time, looking at schematics, things like that, and making sure that I do it right. So let me flip this camera around so I can show you guys what I've been doing. So this guy here actually made a schematic and everything, directions to how to swap from an analog S10 to a digital S10, and it talks about it right here. So he has every pin layout you can think of, from your normal S10 that has an analog dash to the pinout for the digital dash, and then goes through the steps on kind of what to do. And this thing is very, very, very detailed, y'all, very detailed. And then once you get down here, then he has both of the pinouts together. So for example, so this whole thing is referencing a 34 pin connector from the digital dash. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way to 17, and then to 34. The numbers in the next column are actually what you would tie that number into the 18 pin cluster. So for example, if I were to go on the digital dash to pin 1, then I would connect that to pin 6 on the 18 pin cluster. If I was going, again, this is still the S10 to S10. So let's take this for example. Pin 1 on the 34 to pin 6 on the 18 pin cluster, analog cluster. So if you go pin 1 on the 34, temperature sensor input. So I would tie that into pin 6, which is the same, coolant temp sensor input. So temperature sensor, contact those together, you're good to go. So this is actually helping me a lot for mine, because what I would do is I reference this, like what pins go together, and then I go back to the Grand National Turbo Regal, and then I reference that, and just to make sure that I can tie those in to this. So for example here, coolant temp sensor, this is pin 4 on mine, coolant temp gauge. So I would tie in pin 1 to my pin 4. And so what I do is I just reference that they're doing the same thing here in the S10, and then I can reference that to mine and making sure that it's all good. So what this is also showing me here too is what feeds are positive and negative. What I've been doing is I haven't been putting anything in, like soldering them together or anything just yet. What I've been doing is connecting some of the wires together that I know go together, troubleshooting other wires just to make sure that I have those connected right. And what I've been doing is I've just been tying them together and then wrapping them with electrical tape, just kind of temporarily, so that way if I need to take a wire off and move it somewhere else, then I can do that very easily. And I'm just going to keep doing that until all the wires are together that I need. And when I finally put the dash in for the final time, then I'll make it all nice and neat and, you know, solder wires together and whatnot, and then kind of go from there. But from now it looks like a mess. So, but what I have done is hooked up all the power leads together and some of the warning indicator lights like the brake light and the service engine soon light, the generator light, the alternator light. They all work great. I'm gonna try to set up the camera so I can kind of show you guys. It's just kind of a pain because the connector that I have right here that goes here, it won't stay in unless I hold it with my hand. And actually the directions say to pull that out just a little bit and then use a zip tie and wrap it around. Turn it on just to show you that it is wired into the car. All right, so turns on, everything's good. Now, the sensors that I don't have connected as of right now are a gas gauge, the speedometer isn't hooked up obviously, the tach, the coolant, and then you have the oil. The volts I have hooked up, and I also have the check engine light hooked. I have it hooked up, but I don't have it tied into the car yet. I was just going to show you guys that right here. So I have it wired in to the harness itself, check engine, or excuse me, service engine soon light, and the brake light I was going to show you here. So those two are, again, negative ground signals. So when it senses a ground, then that's when they turn on. So I'm going to show you that right now. Soon light, and you'll see that on the bottom left side. You'll see service engine soon, bottom left, right below the fuel gauge. So you'll see it light up. There you go. So I'm on the negative feed of the service engine soon indicator. So basically when you would start the car, as long as everything's good, it would shut off. Then right now, since it's in the keyed on position, then that's why it's still displaying the service engine soon light. So I'm going to tie in to the emergency brake light. Again, another ground. I'm going to tap into it right now, and you should see the brake light come on. I think same area, just far right. Boom. So you see it there, brake light on. There you go. Right now, the emergency brake is actually engaged right now, and so that's why it's being displayed. If I had the emergency brake off, then that light wouldn't come on. That's all the idiot lights that I have tied in right now. So the other ones that I'm gonna have on tied in will be the brights and the upshift light. So this is if it was a manual, and what I'm gonna do is I'm probably gonna tie it into my Akey injection. So when my boost hits a certain PSI, then the Akey clicks on and then it starts to spray. And so I thought that would be kind of cool to have that upshift light turns on. And all it is it's an arrow that points up and it says shift on the bottom. So I thought that would be kind of cool to at least, you know, be able to use some of these idiot lights. So all right, so the main thing just to power it up is you have one main hot feed, which is this orange wire here. And I think this is oh, I labeled them, yeah. And this orange wire is pin 21, so that's a positive feed, and it's a battery hot source. So you want to hook that up just to something hot. So what I have is it hooked up to the ignition coming off the fuse panel. So that's my hot lead. So when I turn the key on, it turns that on. Two other leads as well. You have this one, which is pin 15, and then it's ignition 1/generator. So what I do is I have this hooked up to the positive feed, one positive feed on my my harness that's on the car itself. I actually have two of these, so 15 pin 15 on my Turbo Regal, and then I have one more. I think it's pin 1 is the same exact thing. So fuse positive feed, and I have that one hooked up to a Chia. So pin 18 positive ignition 3 source. So you have pin 15 ignition 1 source on the digital dash, and then pin 18 ignition 3 source, positive source, and I have those both hooked up to basically hot leads coming off of the Turbo Regal individually, since I have 2 hot leads coming off the Turbo Regal harness itself. Then this is actually a separate main battery feed, pin 21 on the digital dash. Have that hooked up directly to a hot lead coming off of the fuse panel. And so those are basically what's needed to power the dash. So a battery hot feed, and then your 2 ignition source feeds coming off the digital dash. And it actually worked out perfect because I had two leads from the Turbo Regal that I could tie into those ignition sources, and then the battery feed, I can just tie that in separately. So on the earlier digital dashes, you actually had to hook this orange wire coming off the digital dash up to the cigarette lighter because it needed a constant hot lead at all times. It had something to do with the trip. But on these models that I think that are 91 through 94, they didn't need to be hooked up to a hot lead all the time. So they changed that. If you follow the pinouts and everything, it'll show you exactly where things go. Today is pretty much going to be more wiring. It's kind of is what it is, you know, at this point. So I have this bulk of mess right here, and all of the wires are labeled, so I know exactly what they are and where they go. I did find that last piece that I needed was the 4-out vehicle sensor buffer. So in this particular vehicle, the vehicle sensor buffer is behind the radio, and then there's a wire that goes up behind the dash, and it has like an optical sensor on it. So it works a little bit different than your traditional vehicle sensor buffer. The one that I need actually calculates 2 different pulses. I think it goes like 2,000 pulses per minute for like your cruise control, and I think it needs a 4,000 pulse per minute for this dash to operate right. So those come in like the early like 90 to 92 Camaros and some of the Firebirds and Trans Ams and things like that, and like the late 80s, early 90s. In the meantime, I can kind of get all this other stuff going. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it, y'all. I'm gonna go ahead and start tackling this. I don't know if I'm gonna put this on film because I don't want to bore you guys, but I'll go ahead and get started, and then I'll chime back in and let you know how far I've gotten. What I did when I bought this new, it came with long wires like this, which is great. The more, the better. But what I did is I basically cut them down and then tied them into the dash harness, and so that way it kind of shortened it up. So it's about this long now. So it's probably still a little bit longer than what I need, but it should help out a lot and clear up some space, and you know, it's kind of tight back there when the dash is on. So I just wanted to kind of clear some things up. When I was talking to you earlier about how I couldn't figure out the turn signal, why it was shutting off the dash, like when I turned the right turn signal, it would make the dash like really dim, like basically go blank. And also I was trying to figure out the dimmer option as well. So I think I figured it out. Well, I did figure out the turn signal. So there's a panel lamp pin on here that I originally didn't know where it was coming from, or not where it was coming from, but what it was for. And I ended up figuring it out. So basically what it does is it basically supplies like more, I don't know if it supplies more voltage to the dash, or it kind of helps regulate power in the dash. So when you have things like, you know, you hit the turn signal, or you hit the brights or something like that, and it runs more current through the dash. I think that panel lamp wire that I didn't know what was for helps kind of regulate that, so that way you don't have dimming in the dash and stuff like that. So what I did is I ended up tying that into the actual dimmer wire. There's a dimmer wire coming from my existing harness here from the Regal, and I tied those two together, and when I turn on the ignition and hit the turn signal, it didn't dim anymore. So I'm pretty sure that's what it's for. And so I just didn't know what to tie it into, because on the schematic for the S10s, if you're swapping it from S10 to S10, then you have a panel lamp from the S10, and then you have a panel lamp from the S10 with the digital dash, and you just tie those together. Well, this one doesn't have that, so I kind of had to figure that out. So again, I just plugged that in from the dimmer wire from my Turbo Regal to the panel lamp input on the digital dash, and it worked. Also too, I think my dimmer, the dimmer here that you can actually dim the lights on the console, I think it's not working right. So I think that might be my problem of why I can't get the dash to actually dim when I want it to dim. It could be the cause of also the dash not dimming when I turn the lights on, because you know, on some newer cars, or a lot of cars actually, when you turn on the headlights, the dash will automatically dim a little bit. Well, mine won't do that, and I still haven't figured that out yet, but I don't know if it has to do with something with my dimmer or not. But anyways, I never dimmed my other dash anyway, so it's not a huge deal, you know. But for me, I just kind of like to have everything working, so kind of anal that way. But yeah, I mean, it's coming along, man. So I'm glad I got this much done. The rest of it is basically just sensors, so like oil sensor. What's going on, y'all, man? I've been at this here for probably about 90 minutes to 2 hours. What I've been doing is actually just cleaning up the wiring, putting the dash in kind of for its final install. I might have to take it out maybe 1 or 2 more times if something happens when I'm putting everything back together, but this should be the last time this thing goes in. Everything is in there, and I have quite a bit of space back there as well. So the old dash used to sit way back here flush, but this one is a lot thinner and it sits in up a little head. But if you can see back there, you can see where the wiring plugs in right there. And I also have another wire, that red and black wire. I don't know if you guys can see to the left of that. That is my alcohol engage, basically, wiring. So when I hit a certain amount of boost, the alcohol kicks in, and then it'll light that light up. And so what I have is I have it hooked up to this upshift light, and I don't know if you guys can tell. You can see that arrow. Right, and I'll show you guys here in a minute when I turn the dash on. The only lights here that are working, and some don't even apply to mine, like the anti-lock brakes, I didn't hook up that light. These are all idiot lights, and these lights are all ground. So that's one thing to notice, and or to keep in mind, and I'll go over that as well a little bit later. So all these are ground wires. So a ground wire, a ground feed triggers these lights. or at least most of them. So the service engine soon light, I have that tied in over here. I don't have everything hooked back up yet, like the headlights. I think this is for rear defrost. I think that's my defrost. So I don't have that all hooked up yet because sometimes I need to access these holes if I need to put my finger in there to grab a wire or something. So I just kind of left them just sitting there. But let me go ahead and shut this thing on so you guys can see it light up and what it looks like. So the brake light is engaged, the pedal engaged, so I have the brake pedal engaged. That's why the brake light is on. But other than that, everything is working. All the sensors are working. I mean, everything is working, man. Only thing I couldn't do about is the mileage, because that's somehow programmed into a chip there, and you can't erase it. I don't know how, I'm not that electrical savvy where I could take it apart and delete it or something like that. I don't think you can, but I think it's tied in more than what people want to do, so they just kind of leave it. There are some buttons here for like trip, to reset the trip and all that, but I don't think I'll be able to leave those in there. I think they'll get in the way of the bezel. That's okay. I mean, I probably won't be able to use them anyway, unless I can make the bezel clean enough where I can expose those buttons. Then I'll put the buttons back in and just kind of leave them there. But other than that, y'all, she is in there. I'll show you real quick kind of how it looks like with the bezel on here in a moment. But I think she looks good, y'all. It's coming along. I have everything wired into like its stock location. So wherever the wires were at before, that's where they're there now. I have my vehicle speed sensor buffer wiring right here, and that's where you would access the normal VSS buffer as well. It's usually like duct taped up there, and this is it right here from like a 91 Camaro or something like that. This one's a little bit different because it's a 4-out buffer. It pulses at 2,000 pulses per mile, I think it is. Some people say minutes, but I think it's mile. 2,000 pulses per mile, and then 4,000 pulses per mile, for one for the TCC lockup and then one for the cruise. And I think the ECMC is one of those as well. All right, y'all, so this part of the film is actually because I forgot to mention something, or I think a part of the video actually deleted it, but I don't want to make it too long because it's going to make it super long and drawn out. But I did leave one important piece of it out, and that's the vehicle speed sensor buffer and the vehicle speed sensor. Now, the yellow box that I was just talking about, that's actually the vehicle speed sensor buffer. And I got that out of a 90 to 92 Camaro. I think they came out of some other models like the Firebird and Trans Am and things like that. They came out of certain models though with certain engines, and I'm not sure if they came, it might have been with digital dashes as well. But anyways, that's called a 4-out vehicle speed sensor buffer. And it has 2 pigtails in it. One's a 2-prong and one's a 4-prong. The one with the 2-prong, those 2 wires go directly to the vehicle speed sensor under the car. And the one that's 4-prong, it has 4 wires on it. I think one is a power wire, one is a ground. I think one goes to the ECM, and the other one goes to the cruise control, I believe. So the 4-out buffer pulses at 2 different speeds, 4,000 ppm and 2,000 ppm. So that's why you need a 4-out buffer, because that is going to help you run the digital dash. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to post a snapshot of the directions that I just told you of how to hook it up. It'll tell you exactly how to hook it up, and those are the directions that I followed, and I'll give credit to the guy who made those directions. It's probably the easiest part of the whole swap is wiring those in. In regards to the vehicle speed sensor that goes under the car to the transmission. Now, this is where I had probably the most trouble. So you're supposed to get an electronic vehicle speed sensor, Cavalier, if I'm not mistaken. I'll double check on that. But it goes right into the side of the transmission on the 204R, right where the speedometer cable goes into the mechanical gear. Well, I could not get the mechanical gear out for nothing. I tried every single thing to get that thing out, and that thing was like seized in there. It's only actually held in by like one bolt and a clamp, and I could not get it out. I don't know why. It's just sometimes they get seized up, and I didn't want to mess it up. I didn't want to mess up the threads or anything, just in case I needed to use it still. So after a couple days of battling with it, I just left it alone. Since then, I had ordered a Dakota digital signal interface. Now, what that was going to do was going to replace the 4-out buffer and the need for the vehicle speed sensor, and it would tie all into that interface, and that way I would still be able to run the dash. But that was an extra $100, but I had already bought it. But then a light came on, and this is what I ended up doing. So I still used that vehicle speed sensor that I bought that was going to plug into the side of the transmission. However, I just installed it here. So this is actually hooked up to the end of my mechanical speedometer cable. So there's a cable that comes off of that mechanical gear to the side of the transmission, up along under the car, and up to here. Then you have another part of the cable that screws onto there, and that's what goes to the back of the analog dash. Well, I took that part off, that extension part off the analog dash, and let me back up for a second. When I had my digital dash, my other digital dash in here, that part of the cable that came out of the digital dash, because I still needed it for that particular dash, hooked up to an electronic speed generator. And what that did was the mechanical part of the speedometer cable spent the generator, and there was 2 wires coming off the generator, and that went into my to the cluster. That was kind of like my vehicle speed sensor. So that generator would calculate the pulse, the correct pulse that went in through the wires and went into the dash. And so that's how I got my speed to work. So using that same concept here, I just put that electronic vehicle speed sensor right here in its place. And the only thing that I had to do was there's like a little D-shaped arm, aluminum arm on the end that's going into that hose in there. It's actually like a D-shaped, and that D-shape is for you to slide the mechanical gear, tooth gear on that spins with the governor inside the transmission. Well, what I did is I shaved that D-shaped arm down to look like this right here. So this is the extension part of my cable that I was just talking about that hooked up to the back of the dash. And if you guys can see, it's kind of like a square shape cable. And so what I did is I just took a grinding tool and I just made it to the shape of that. I just took my time, and then it slid right into the cable, and it worked perfect. So same concept as a little generator that I use. Now, this is going to be another step. It wasn't hard to do, but it's just going to be another step into making this swap happen. Most people won't have to do this. Probably 99% of people won't have to do this because they'll be able to get that gear out. Then it just would be as simple as just sliding that gear in, or the speed sensor in, and then running your wires up and you're good. Probably a 5-minute job, really. Well, I had to go this route just because that would not fit in the side of my transmission. So, but this is the part that goes to that 2-wire prong on the yellow vehicle speed sensor buffer. So this is what I was talking about there that goes to the buffer. So hopefully that clears some things up. Don't mean to throw a little curveball in the video, but I forgot to film the buffer part, and then the vehicle speed sensor video, I don't know where that went. It just must have had deleted. So hopefully that wasn't too confusing, and so we'll continue with the rest of the video. All right, so here she go with the bezel on, and what I am waiting for is I ordered some tinted plexiglass, because what I'll have to do is cut this area out here. So this out, and then this piece out. I'll have to cut that out, make sure I do a good job of cutting that out. And then I have some black tinted plexiglass coming, or they call it smoked. I have that coming as well. And what I also did too is they make these dim sheets. They're kind of like just tint rolls, but it's a little bit sturdier than a roll. It's an actual sheet, and it's for dimming for like computer use, or if you want to cover your your alarm clock at night or something like that. I don't know who uses an alarm clock anymore as far as the old school ones, but you know how sometimes the alarm clocks, the old ones, used to be really bright and keep you up at night. They're for things like that. And so I ordered a couple sheets of those. That way I can possibly use that sheet to cover up the cluster. That way you don't see all the circuit board and all that. So I might use a sheet just to cover that. And then I have a 1/16 of an inch thick plexiglass, smoked plexiglass coming. And then I was gonna stick it to the back of the bezel here. So that way it'll be perfectly just like blacked out, so you can't see anything except for the lights from the dash when it comes on. So, but that's kind of what it would look like in there, and I think it looks really good, y'all. Now, I thought that I had it in there perfect. It still is good. I just have it a little high, I think, because you can't really see the miles per hour initials there, and you can't really see the very top, like you can see all the icons of the gauges, but you can't, like the top of the line is kind of cut off, at least from sitting in the driver's side. Now if I'm looking down, I can see it, and I think when I installed it, that's how I installed it. I was like, oh, it's perfect, it's good. But I think it's just a tad high. I probably could have lowered it about 1/8 of an inch, maybe a little bit more, and it would have been cool. But what I think I can do is I have about 1/4 of an inch here of this bezel, because what I was originally going to do is just cut this line off, if you guys can see it, and then leave that top line exposed. That's why I'll have this outline. I'll have that there. But what I might do is, since there's a natural kind of line here that I can stick my fingernail in, I'll probably use that line as my guide, and then I'll go ahead and just cut this off here, and then the same thing down here. And then that way I'll probably regain that area that I can't see the top of the cluster on, and then be good to go. So not a huge deal. I was just trying to make it look all nice and neat with that natural silver lining that's already there, but it is what it is. So the next part that you'll see will be with the plexiglass on. That'll probably be here in like less than a week, hopefully, and then we'll be good, man. I think we'll be good. I still haven't got the car back together, so I can't start it to see if everything really works. Now it is reading the volts, so I know that works. My gas gauge seems to be working. I think it is pretty close to full, and that's what it's registering. The coolant is obviously below 180, or whatever it says its lowest point is. I don't know. All right, and the coolant is definitely below 100 degrees, so that's why it's not registering the coolant. But I did test the coolant temp sensor. I just stuck my heat gun on it, and as it got hotter and hotter, it rose on the gauge, so I know it's registering right. And the oil pressure sensor is working. As you can see, it's blinking up there, and that's just telling me that it's sensing, but it's not really working right now because the car isn't on and it's not running yet, so it's not sensing any oil pressure. The tach, I won't know if that works until I can get the car running as well. I do have the tach wired in, so the tach is wired in right now, and parking brake disengaged, so that shuts off, and we are good. Here's an upper view, and this is exactly what I wanted. Can hardly see any wiring. It doesn't look like a mess back there. Nothing's really cut up and mangled or nothing. All right, y'all, I want to do inaugural drive, man. I got it all put back together, and this is the first drive. Everything works. The only thing I still have to hook up is the check engine light, which I just tested, and it works great. So I still have to hook that up as well. This will be my first time kind of seeing what the speedometer does. So I gotta get that dialed in. Hopefully it works. So first drive, y'all. Here we go. So I don't have much battery, so hopefully it doesn't die on me. So Speedo seems to be working on point. 15 miles here, 15 miles an hour there. So that's a good sign. I just remembered I haven't tightened my steering wheel cluster. So I gotta stop real quick and tighten my cluster. So the two nuts on the bottom that hold it up, I only have like one and it's like barely on, so I gotta stop real quick. I forgot all about that. Man, that sequential turn signal is so cool, man. Column wasn't bolted in on the bottom, so I just hand tightened it. All right, let's do it. So right off the bat, and I noticed this yesterday when I was letting it break in, is it seems a lot quieter. Like the valve train, I guess not so much quieter, but it seems smoother. Let me say it seems smoother. Before it used to just not sound as smooth as it does now. Take it on the freeway. So happy, man. The speedometer is right on the money. So we'll see how the speedometer works at higher speeds. And I'm pumped about my gas gauge, man. I haven't had my gas gauge in a long time. So I'm not gonna get on it or anything, but you know, I'm just gonna try to see how it feels and how it sounds, just gradually getting in and out of it, just regular daily driving. Feels good. We're gonna go up a hill. I missed that turbo spool. Tax registry. Seems to be on too.